They told you life was about finding answers, but no one told you the answers were never the point. You've been chasing certainty, like everyone else, not realizing that the most important truths are the ones you were trained to ignore. From the moment you could speak, you were taught to name things, to fit the world into boxes you didn't build, and to see yourself as something separate from it all. But what if that was the first lie? What if the truth isn't hidden in some secret vault, but buried beneath the noise of your own mind? And what if the only thing standing between you and it is the story you've been told about who you are? They don't want you to know, not because they fear you, but because the moment you see for yourself, you'll never need their answers again. You wake up every morning inside a story that began before you were born. You didn't write the first chapter. You didn't choose the plot. By the time you learned to form sentences, the lines had already been handed to you, and you recited them without question. You were told what to call things, what to value, what to fear, and what to dream about. You learned that certain answers were right, and others were wrong, and the faster you could choose the right ones, the more approval you received. But no one asked if those questions were worth asking in the first place. It's strange how quickly you can forget that life was once a raw, unfiltered thing. As a child, you saw without judgment. A tree was not beautiful or ugly, it simply was. The rain didn't ruin your plans. It was an entire world falling from the sky. Somewhere along the way, that way of seeing was replaced. Your mind became crowded with labels, opinions, and rules. The simplicity of being was buried beneath the constant demand to know, to categorize, to decide. They don't tell you that this is the first veil, the quiet training to mistake the map for the territory, the name for the thing itself. And then there's the quiet pressure to keep going, to keep proving yourself worthy by achieving what everyone else seems to be chasing: a better job, a bigger house, more recognition. And even when you get them, you can't quite name the emptiness that follows. You just know you were promised something more than this. You were promised that, if you did everything right, life would finally make sense. But the truth, the one they never teach, is that life doesn't need to make sense to be whole. It was already whole before you arrived. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is silent and the glow of your phone screen finally fades, you feel it, that quiet space between thoughts. It's fleeting, like catching the tail of a dream before it slips away. In that space, you sense something deeper, older than words. But then the noise returns. Your to-do list, your responsibilities, the endless scroll of other people's lives. And just like that, the moment is gone. They don't tell you that you can live in that space, not just touch it. They don't tell you because if you knew, you'd stop needing the distractions they've built to keep you busy. Every society, in its own way, teaches its children what to see and what to ignore. The ignored parts become invisible not because they are small, but because no one points to them anymore. No one tells you that the most transformative truths are rarely in the spotlight. They live in the periphery, in the pause before you speak, in the breath you take when you don't know what to say, in the way light falls through a window and lands on your skin. The world is full of signals, but you've been trained to tune into only a narrow frequency, one that keeps you operating inside the expected boundaries. Think about the last time you were truly still. Not scrolling, not planning, not preparing to be somewhere else. Just still. Maybe it was years ago, maybe decades. In that stillness, something shifts. The layers of thought begin to dissolve, and you start to notice the quiet hum beneath everything. It's not dramatic. It's not a thunderclap revelation. It's more like recognizing a face in a crowd that you've been walking past your whole life. Familiar, patient, waiting. This is where the first thread of the old story begins to loosen. You realize that the you who was taught to seek approval, to chase validation, to constantly solve life like a puzzle, that version is not the whole of you. It's a mask, perfectly crafted to fit the roles you were given, and masks can be removed. But here's the strange thing. No one needs to take it from you. They don't need to lock it on your face. You keep wearing it because you believe it's you. And belief is the strongest lock of all. If you're quiet enough, you start to see the cracks. You notice how much of what you call your life is simply momentum habits you didn't choose, patterns you inherited, assumptions you never questioned. You see how your reactions to the world are rehearsed. Someone praises you, you feel good. Someone criticizes you, you feel bad. You win, you smile. You lose, you suffer. As if the value of your existence could be measured in a scoreboard you didn't even create. They don't want you to know that you can step off that field entirely. But here's the secret. It's not that there's some grand conspiracy keeping you from this truth. It's that the truth requires a kind of seeing that can't be forced on anyone. It has to be discovered in the silence between your thoughts, in the spaces where your conditioning hasn't yet reached. And so the world keeps turning, and most people keep playing their part, never realizing the script was optional. Maybe that's why you're here, listening now. Somewhere inside, you've felt it, that faint pull towards something beyond the chase, beyond the noise. You've glimpsed the edge of the map and wondered what's outside it. You've suspected that the story of who you are is too small for the life you're meant to live. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to turn the page. Because what they don't want you to know is not hidden in the dark. It's hidden in plain sight, in the very act of noticing. The door has always been open. You just have to remember where to look. The moment you begin to step outside the inherited story, the world changes, not because the world itself is different, but because you are. The shapes and colors of life rearrange themselves. You notice the way people speak to each other, the way their words often serve as armor rather than connection. You see how so much of human interaction is an unspoken agreement to protect the illusions that keep everyone feeling safe. Compliments become currency. Small talk becomes a shield. Arguments become rehearsed scripts where no one actually listens. At first, this can feel isolating. You begin to sense the gap between what people say and what they actually mean. You start hearing the subtext beneath conversations, the unsaid truths vibrating just below the surface. It's tempting to pull away entirely, to withdraw from the play and watch from the wings. But you quickly realize that isolation is just another form of hiding. Seeing the truth is not an invitation to escape life, it's an invitation to meet it more deeply. The strange thing is, once you notice the illusions in others, you can't help but notice them in yourself. You catch yourself telling little lies to avoid discomfort. You watch your mind create stories to protect your pride. You notice the subtle ways you try to control how others see you, adjusting your words, your tone, your posture, as if life were a performance you must constantly perfect. And then you see it clearly. You are not separate from the illusions of the world, you are part of the same machinery. It's humbling, even unsettling, to realize how deeply the conditioning runs. But there's a quiet relief in it too, because once you see the machinery, you can stop mistaking it for who you are. You can watch a thought arise without obeying it. You can feel an emotion without letting it decide your actions. You can hear the old story playing in your mind without letting it write the next page. This is the first real taste of freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to not be ruled by the unconscious patterns you never chose. They don't want you to know this, because the moment you stop being ruled by those patterns, you stop being predictable. And a predictable person is easy to manage. An unpredictable one, someone who acts from clarity instead of conditioning, is harder to control, harder to sell to, harder to manipulate. Not because they're rebellious, but because they no longer need what the world is selling. When you live like this, something subtle shifts in your relationships. You start listening differently. Not to the words, but to the pauses. Not to the arguments, but to the fears hiding inside them. You begin to see that everyone is fighting an invisible battle, not against the world, but against their own reflection in it. Some people sense this shift in you and draw closer, curious. Others feel threatened and pull away, and that's okay. You realize that connection built on truth will always be fewer in number, but richer in depth. The deeper you go, the more you understand that truth is not a destination. There is no final revelation that will wrap everything in neat answers. Instead, truth feels like peeling layers from an onion, each one revealing another, thinner layer beneath. Sometimes what you uncover is beautiful. Other times it's raw and painful. But each layer brings you closer to something more real than the roles you've played. There are moments when you'll want to turn back. Moments when the simplicity of the old illusions feels safer than the vastness of not knowing. You may even miss the comfort of certainty, the clear lines between right and wrong, the familiar rhythm of seeking approval. But if you pay attention, you'll see that what you once called comfort was actually confinement. And once you've seen the walls for what they are, you can't unsee them. Stepping outside the inherited story doesn't mean rejecting the world. It means meeting it without the filter you were taught to wear. It means seeing a tree without the word tree attached to it. Seeing a stranger without the silent assumptions about who they must be. It means letting life be what it is before your mind tries to explain it. And in that space, a strange thing happens. You begin to feel a quiet intimacy with everything. Not an emotional high, not a dramatic spiritual awakening, but a steady, unshakable sense of being at home in a world that once felt foreign. But here's the paradox. The closer you get to this kind of seeing, the less you can explain it to others. Words can only point toward the experience, never replace it, try to describe it. And you sound vague, even evasive. People may ask, but what do you mean? What exactly did you find? And you can only smile because you know that the question itself comes from the very mind that cannot see until it stops looking in the usual way. You learn to carry this quietly, not as a secret, but as something too alive to be reduced to a concept. You stop trying to convince anyone because you know that each person will find their own way or not in their own time. And strangely, this makes you more patient, more compassionate. Because you remember that you, too, once lived entirely inside the story, believing it was the whole world. And so you keep walking, not towards something, but with something. A deeper presence that seems to walk with you, seeing through your eyes, listening through your ears. You start to notice that even the smallest moments, the flicker of sunlight on a wall, the sound of your own breath, the way someone's hand rests on a table feel complete in themselves. You begin to suspect that life was never asking you to solve it, only to participate in it. This is the part they don't tell you, that the truth you've been searching for is not out there waiting to be found. It's here, in the way you experience this very moment. It's not a prize at the end of a long journey, but the ground you've been walking on all along. And once you see that, the need to chase, to prove, to be more than you are, begins to dissolve. And yet, there's more. Because seeing this truth is only the beginning. The real question is, how do you live from it? How do you carry this clarity into a world still caught in its own illusions? That is where the next chapter begins. Living from this awareness is less about what you do and more about how you see. On the surface, your life might look the same. You still work, talk to friends, run errands, wash dishes. But beneath the surface, everything is different. You are no longer driven by the invisible currents of fear, approval, or comparison. You still feel those impulses from time to time. They don't vanish overnight, but they no longer decide your direction. You have stepped into the driver's seat of your own attention, and that changes everything. The first thing you notice is how much energy is freed up. When you stop endlessly rehearsing the past or anticipating the future, your mind feels lighter. There's a natural clarity that emerges, as if the fog you once thought was part of the landscape has quietly lifted. You find yourself responding to life instead of reacting to it. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of the automatic burst of anger, you simply see the moment for what it is: a car changing lanes, a human being caught in their own urgency. You still act when needed, but without the weight of unnecessary emotion. Relationships begin to shift in subtle but profound ways. Without the constant need to protect an image of yourself, you can meet others as they are. You don't need them to confirm your worth, and so you stop shaping yourself to fit their expectations. Paradoxically, this makes your connections more genuine. People feel the difference when they are seen without judgment, when they are met without the unspoken demand to be a certain way. Some people will be drawn to you for this reason. Others may find it unsettling because it disrupts the familiar patterns they are used to. Either way, you stop living for their reactions. You also begin to see how much beauty exists in the small, ordinary moments. You no longer rush past them in pursuit of the big events. A shadow stretching across the floor in the late afternoon sun, the rhythm of rain against a window, the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the early hours of the morning. These moments don't need to be shared or documented. They need only to be lived. And the more you notice them, the more you realize they were never small at all. They were the texture of life itself. But living this way is not always comfortable. The more you see, the more you notice the layers of illusion still operating in the world, the constant selling of identities, the manufactured urgency, the endless pursuit of more, as if it were a cure for the quiet ache inside. You watch people run themselves into exhaustion chasing goals they don't remember choosing. You listen to conversations that circle endlessly around the same fears and complaints, and you realize you can't wake anyone up before they are ready. The best you can do is live in a way that makes the alternative visible. This is where courage comes in, not the loud, heroic kind, but the quiet courage of staying true to what you've seen, even when the world around you doesn't understand. It's easy to be pulled back into the old rhythms. The noise is persuasive. The comfort of belonging to the crowd is tempting. But you know now that belonging at the cost of your own seeing is not belonging at all. So you choose to keep your eyes open, even when it means walking a lonelier path. Over time, the loneliness fades. You start meeting others who have made similar discoveries, often without words to describe them. You recognize each other not through shared beliefs, but through a shared way of being. There's an ease in their presence, a lack of the constant grasping and defending. These connections are rare, but they feel like home. They remind you that while the journey is solitary, it is not isolated. There are others walking it too, even if the paths rarely cross. And as you keep living from this awareness, you realize something unexpected. You no longer need the story of what they don't want you to know to guide you. The idea that something was hidden, that you had to uncover it, was only the bridge to this point. The truth itself has no owner. It is not kept by some shadowy they, nor is it yours to possess. It's simply here, woven into every breath, every moment, every sound and silence. You start to see that there was never a gate to unlock, no finish line to cross. What you thought was a journey to find the truth was really a journey to stop looking away from it. All the seeking, all the questioning, all the peeling away of layers, it was only to bring you to this point of direct seeing. And now, the real living begins. Because the question is no longer, what is the truth? But, how will I live knowing it? Will you carry it quietly, letting it shape your days from within? Will you use it to soften the edges of your judgments, to widen your compassion, to bring more presence to the spaces you inhabit? Or will you let it fade, slipping back into the warm familiarity of the old story? The choice is yours. No one can make it for you. But know this, once you've seen the open sky, you can never fully believe in the ceiling again. You can pretend it's there, you can act as if you've forgotten, but somewhere deep down you'll remember, and that memory will always be calling you back. So here is the invitation, if you are willing to accept it. Stop waiting. Stop believing the next piece of information, the next achievement, the next external change will bring you what you seek. Instead, pause right here, right now, and see what remains when you let all of that go. Notice the space between your thoughts. Notice the way the air feels on your skin. Notice the quiet hum beneath everything. That is the thing they can't give you, can't sell you, can't take from you. And if you begin living from that place, everything changes, not because the world will finally match your expectations, but because you will no longer need it to. That is what they don't want you to know. And now, you do. If this stirred something in you, a pull toward a deeper way of living, don't let it become just another idea you forget by tomorrow. Take one moment today to be still, to step outside the noise, and see what's there without naming it. If you feel ready, share this message with someone who might need the reminder, not to convince them, but to plant a seed. You never know when it might take root.